No national item.
Please, let's take the no national item.
Ọba ẹwà n'oge n'iwo, oye kẹlẹkẹlẹ máa dọyọ, ọ̀rá déwu mọ̀jà náà ẹ̀ o, túwà tọ́gbèké, ọba dàtọ̀ pé iṣẹ́. Ọba látọ̀ pé iṣẹ́ ènìkà ó yàwé wọ́n bá wà ó tú àtọ̀ pèké. Ọba àtọ̀ pé iṣẹ́.
Ọmọ ẹ̀la ilé ìlú ní Màrẹ̀.
worry.
Not big. Anyone available?
Bye.
What's another day? Nígbà ọ̀yá gbogbo wọ́n pẹ́ wọn ìwé tó yà fẹ́ máa níbi great Benin descendant wọn tó wà sí kòkò wọn náà dídá yẹn náà ìmọ̀ ayé àrí àyàwògbé màrí àgbọ̀n ìlọ̀kìn àwọ̀ kẹ̀kẹ́ ìmọ̀ àwọn náà wíyà sọ̀rọ̀ ọ̀gá ni màá kí àrẹ̀ dídá yẹn náà sábà ọ̀dọ̀ pàṣẹ yọ ni mà ẹgbẹ́ ìmọ̀ àtàwọn náà yà fẹ́ ló pàṣẹ yọ lọ́nà àmọ̀ yà fẹ́ ọ̀rọ̀ wọ́n yà fẹ́ ìwù wọn wà kéré wà á dùn wà máa wẹ̀rí wà ń fún àwọn. Wà á gbé wọ́n so wà rẹ̀ o. Màá ní ní ẹdẹ tó náà aláàdá ò màá mí o. Ẹ tí ń fún máa máa ń wí máa o. Èmi kò máa rí bọ́ yà fẹ́ máa ó náà yà tún yẹ domu ní ká owó sàbọ̀ àwọn àjọ pàṣẹ yọ ni máa. Ọba wa ẹ̀ ní ọkọ̀ bá gidi gan ọ̀tọ̀ ọba ìpẹ́ o. Ọyọ pé wọn ò dúgbì ọba ìlú bọ́ ẹ̀fọ́. Ọba àtọkọ ẹ.
Okay, all right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start. Press statement delivered by Imashwen Amowe Oduduwa, Coordinator General, Great Benin Descendants Worldwide, on July 24th, 2021. Good morning to all the pressmen seated here for the press conference of this association. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen from the academia, civil society, and from all walks of life, I say welcome most sincerely. First, before we officially unveil the essence of this press conference, permit me to introduce this group to you all appropriately. Since the inception of this group, we have identified over 42 ethnic nationalities or clans who have enthusiastically traced their roots to Benin. For purpose of time, we will hurriedly mention few of them. Esans, Esako, Owan, Ekbeye, Ogba, Epie, and Atise, Iwuroha, popularly known as the Equerry, the Ogwea people, the Gede of the present-day Benue state. We have the Ikare Ekiti, we have the Aborigines of Eko, we have Aborigines of Itagbulu in present-day Ondo State. We have parts of Ika, we have the Onitsha people of Anambra State. We have the Oguta of Imo State. We have the Urubu, we have the Shoko, we have parts of Ishekiri people. We have Degema, as far back as Guinea and Ghana, Togo, and Benin Republic. We were in Ghana a few weeks ago, so we can testify the outstretch of Benin Empire towards that region. It is in this knowledge that we are pained of the injustice done to us by the British, and we are the last true resistance to their plans. Without our defeat, Nigeria as a country would not have existed, and as such, we are the thriving nation which gave birth to Nigeria. Having briefly established the mandate of our group, we can now proceed to the business of today. The foundation of our organization is built in truth, integrity, selflessness, and patriotism. These in turn were the very fundamental elements that built the civilization the world came to envy. We must then start to find probable ways to tap into these rare virtues of our ancestors in order to find ways to curb the present trend of moral decadence in our society. This is about the toughest time, bested only by the dark days immediately following the British invasion. Our collective history has never been this threatened from both insiders and outsiders. We are barely gasping for air in order to survive the seemingly insurmountable assault from our supposedly relatives and neighbors, who will then come for a rescue, a question begging for an answer. And the truth is, no one else should bear our pains for us other than ourselves. We must therefore face these tribulations head on through unity with the hope that victory shall be attained. We have been perplexed with the beastly issues about our artifacts, and it has become a circular discussion in the lives of everybody. Different opinions have been articulated, some from the standpoint of interest, some from the standpoint of emotion, but our standpoint is anchored on truth. We collectively hold the reason of this press briefing and stated clearly that the bitter pill of the British invasion is engraved in the deepermost incourse of our soul, and we shouldn't play politics or be sentimental about the whole scenario. The artifacts in question belong to the Oba of Benin and should be diligently handed over to him. And we also respectfully believe that the Palace of the Oba of Benin should work with the Edo State government to share ideas that will rectify our sacred artifacts and also look into the prospect of using this glamorous artifact to better the lots of all Edo people. Oba Simi, Oba Atokbe. The Edo man has continued to strive to break free from the unfortunate episode of the British invasion, with or without those artifacts stolen from the Palace of the Oba of Benin, and will continue to be so. As such, our organization do believe that there are other situations currently trending in Benin Kingdom that must be given even more rapt attention. These situations, if allowed to linger more, it's believed will further destroy the very existence of our unique race. We must therefore reinstate clearly that the Oba and the Edo people are two sides of a coin. They are inseparable. Every intended gathering to separate these unbreakable cords, enmeshed in the sacrosanctity of our native promulgated law, will further draw us even closer to our God King, Oba or Edoya. Suffice to say, we must then now come together to fight our common enemies. Some are our very own self, and others are those around us. Oba, talk about it.
Yes, sir.
We have watched in few years now, while our people continue to desecrate the very essence of our land, tradition, and customs, without concerted effort from all Edo people to curb this growing menace. Our history is currently being torn apart by the modern-day revisionists in all social media outlets. Very few Edo people are still standing tall to curtail the gang-up of our neighbors which is heavily being aided by our very own sons and daughters, in order to completely vanquish our pride of our glorious past. We are rather frustrated on how some of our elders and elites have continued to concede to us their supposed jobs, and yet no support from them, except for very few of them who, by their sacrifices, we have maintained the platform and energy to continue to defend our God-given heritage. We appreciate those proud Edo sons and daughters who have given their all to this cause, and to those who are currently doing their best to salvage the emerging situation at hand. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, we can now proceed to some very critical aspects of our society that we feel is as important as the return of our artifacts, only that we are not observant enough to know that these things are even more important to the survival of our race. Number one, some months ago, one pastor, Ayo Arisejofo, did fallaciously state that the Obas of Benin are of Yoruba descent, and that the official language of the palace until recent times was Yoruba language. We wish to use this press conference to once again do justice to such uninformed lies and educate the said pastor who was alleged to have stolen Nigeria Commonwealth with a private jet to South Africa some time ago to desist from historical issues and squarely face how to further extort his members. People allegedly ascribe the invention of the word Ikaladeran to Obairedia of blessed memory, that he coined the word to discredit his Yoruba heritage. Those thoughts are steeped in the abyss of the ignorance of such minds. Hence, an illumination of facts will help in bringing these people to historical light. Ikaladeran first appeared in written word in 1903, an extract from colonial recordings in the 1800s and published in 1903, which states, Guatun was the head center of the court Malakun, the spirit of big water, that is, the sea, big rivers, not creeks. Hence, it is easy to understand why it should be the town set aside for the entrance to Benin of the white man who came to the big water. I used to be told in vague the tale of the foundation of Guatun, that is, the Guatun in this extract is referring to Uwaton, a son of a king named Kaladason, you couldn't pronounce it properly because it's a Dutch, was its founder. Either his mother was false or he was accused of attempting one of his father's wives. Anyhow, he fled from Benin, and after much wandering and some magic with a palm tree and a turtle, took up his home at Guatun, where the turtle is sacred to this day, as it is also in Ilaro to the west of Lagos colony and in many other places. Kaladeson's town throve, and he defeated an army sent by the king of Benin. His independent sovereignty was allowed, but he was never to return to Benin. The book is called Great Benin, His Customs, Art and Horror, written by Lingrot in 1903. Other Benin's fine minds, like Chief Aimi Wu, did an article on Oduduwa and Ikaladeran in the 1960s. D.N. Onsaye wrote about Ikaladeran in the 1980s, as well as other Benin historians like O.S.B. Omoyege, Chief Osenege Eho, before Obairedia published his work in 2004. So it is completely misleading to conjure fallacies of Ikaladeran origin, as Benin strongly believe that Ikaladeran became Oduduwa, a ruler in Ife, a move that prompted Olia Awoma to lead other delegations of Benin chiefs to retrieve their heir apparent, the only surviving son of Ogiso Owodo. The facts outlined completely assert the indigenous evolution of an idea of this personification of Ikaladeran and its travails in his homeland in Benin Kingdom. One must quickly also discredit the wrong assertion that the official language of the palace of the Oba of Benin was Yoruba language. Rather, we can say that at one point in time, the official language, can we say that at one point in time, the official language of the Ooni's palace was Edo language? Because according to the oldest tradition practiced in Ile-Ife, called the Ikedu tradition, it is established that words like Ogane, Olokun, Uko, etc. were largely used in the palace established by Ikaladeran in Ile-Ife. One cannot but denying the maternal origin of Oromia being a Yoruba, having a Yoruba woman. Hence, the Yoruba language was sparingly used in the palace of the earliest Obas of Benin, just like how a Caladora introduced some Edo words into the Ile-Ife community, which has become an extant part of their oldest tradition. There is also an actual video circulating through the social media space, where it was alleged that the Oba of Benin, during his coronation speech, did agree to his Yoruba heritage. We want to use this medium to say that those editors of those videos are being rather petty, as Oba Benin reiterated his complete Benineness, where he asserted his coronation speech, and I quote, "I therefore stand before you as the 40th Oba of Benin, the direct descendant of Oromia, the son of Oduduwa, whom the Benins of that era knew as Ikaladeran, their self-exiled prince who later became a ruler in Ile-Ife. With his majesty's speech, it is more than glaring that he completely understands the history of his ancestry. Of all the later three Western educated Obas of Benin, none of them has ever, by any documentation, either written or visual, described themselves as being a Yoruba king. Oba Akenzo II was the brain behind the creation of Midwest region from the old Western region, while will a supposedly Yoruba man dissociate himself so vehemently from his Yoruba people? Oba Erediawa gave the biggest blow to the preposterous presumption of Benin kings being of Yoruba ancestry by publishing a book titled I Remember Your Obedient Servant in 2004. Oba Atokwe. We have suffered a lot of historical distortions in the hands of those who could have been heroes of true historical accounts. But because of reasons unknown, they continue to dwell in lies and try all that they can to subvert the history of a greater people, maybe because of their ethnic hegemony and supremacy for political gains. The truth is that we as a Edo nation and people know better and will no longer assume alien antecedents for ourselves. As your Oduduwa being currently projected as progenitor of the Yoruba race, enjoys a wide range of uncertainty within the intellectual sphere of the Yoruba people. Questions that are readily asked include, why did it take Oduduwa 16 years to master the Yoruba if he was truly a Yoruba man? What does Oduduwa mean in Yoruba language? The funniest of them all is Yoruba spreading means for truth. How does any human fall from the sky? So Yoruba historians will agree that Oduduwa was a foreigner because it meant the aborigines of Ife, majority of which are now located in present-day Ondo State as Ugbo people. There are historical evidence that support the indigenous evolution for the origin of Eweka First Dynasty, as opposed to alien antecedents being canvassed by some writers. In the records covering the period of the Ogisos, it was found out that Ogiso Rire, who reigned from 66 to 100 CE, died without an heir, and the oldest man was chosen among the nobles as successor, who became Ogiso or Dia. There was no use to request for a ruler from a non-existent Ile-Ife. When Ogiso Ehenede died without an heir in about 1821 to 1871 CE, they chose another man, Ohuede, son of Oboete, the second son of Ogiso, that is Oriagba's grandson, as next of kin, who became Ogiso Owede. There was no delegation to Ile-Ife. During the period of Owodo's travails that culminated in the years of Ilferegnum, Prince Ikaladeran and his family was in Ile-Ife. It would be wrong, therefore, to choose another while the genuine heir apparent to the throne was still living, according to AFC writers, which posits that next to nothing is known about the Yoruba people themselves at this early date. And the assertion that Benin sent for an alien Yoruba ruler instead of accepting one of their numbers was inherently implausible. We are sounding a very stern warning to revisionists to desist from our history and concentrate in making history for their own future generations, just like the one the great Benin people currently enjoys. Fact number 2. A lot of questions have been asked as to the backbone of the old kingdom of Benin, how our imperial ancestors held sway in the thick of old times, built a very intimidating kingdom which was highly revered by far and near. There were elements that made it practically impossible for such feats to have been attained. The consequences of deviating from such vital attributes or elements have made our people to be who we are today. The Benin Oba presided over the political, traditional, administrative affairs of his people with the councils of elders, Uzamani, state councillors, Egaiwonoe and Egaiwonogbe, a Nigi who helped in taking care of the periphery of the vast kingdom in forms of dukes, or Jongwe, who by native laws and custom of the Edo land solicit and through his fellow elders gave structured leadership to his community. Ihe. They helped the Oba maintain spiritual guidance through the deities and sanctify the land in times of infractions through propitiations. The Egeli protects the laid-down values of our land and enforce sanctions. Selflessness was one of the greatest attributes of an Edoma. It was a pride in the past to render these services to the kingdom without expectation of any form of recompense. It foils the patriotic abilities of every Edoma, and through these, in tandem with the structured organization of the Edo people, a civilization was built, and the Edoma had those attributes that are almost a rarity in the market as of today. Truth. He prided himself in his ability to speak truth to whoever, irrespective of how highly placed. The services of the Edoma were sought after because of these virtues. Today, our society has largely eroded these common virtues of selflessness, patriotism, and truth in pursuit of riches and fame. These dignifying qualities are now found in a handful of Edo people. Community leaders now sacrifice their integrity for wealth, now fight their brothers for foreigners. Our values have never been this eroded. Hence, the growing madness of our people on social media space. They now desecrate the traditions of our land without remorse. Abominable words are now found daily on their lips. If we all don't collectively stand to fight these growing trends of our very much depleted values of our people, we might someday be a people without tradition and culture. Every Edo person must rise to fight those drifting from what made an Edoma what it was in the time past. To us, an association, this is what is really important, the survivor of our race. By the instance of this press conference, we are pleading with our Royal Majesty to look into these things that we have outlined. Edo is fast disengaging from the values that made us Edo. Nedogeria Eimagwalo Obaratokwe. The third one, Aradagada Summit. This is an annual event that brings together all great Benin descendants all over the world. We believe there has to be a platform where all great Benin descendants can identify themselves with to discuss and chart the same socio-economic and socio-political ideas. We are not minorities. We only became one because we chose to. Our annual summit presents the opportunity like this for us to discuss practical ways where we can unite ourselves for a common futuristic goal. The event ought to be 22nd of July every year, when the Benin monarch was reborn in 1914 after 17 years of interregnum because of the British invasion. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, I wish to announce that Benin Kingdom is officially 2,058 years old, since our king and father reigned as Ogisho Igodo. And by that reason, we are the second oldest surviving monarchy in the world and Africa's oldest surviving monarchy. Ogisho Kire Obara Tokbere. The mathematical calculation is thus. Ogisho dynasty lasted for 854 years, 285 years of the first interregnum, and 70 years of second interregnum, And lastly, 849 years of the present Oba dynasty and still counting. When calculated together, gives 2058 years. It is through the knowledge of these that we are always proud of the legacies of the past and how we can build more on those legacies. That is why our annual Agadagada Summit was inaugurated in 2017 to create a platform where issues that will make us even greater can be presented. This year's summit will hold in the beautiful city of Port Harcourt, Rivers State, where we arguably have the largest concentration of Benin descendants. The said event is slated for the 28th of August, 2021. The last one. Lastly, our association has done the impossible since the inception in 2017. We have concentrated in uniting other Benin descendants in faraway land and lost focus of their very own people in present-day Edo State. Today we are faced with the sad reality that our people have never been this divided, and we must spring into action so it doesn't degenerate further. We are writing letters immediately after this press conference to 5 Enije in Esan land, notably the Okai Jesan, for a private meeting to discuss on how we can find better ways to unite our people. Those letters will be submitted in 2 days' time with a probable meeting with the Okai Jesan in the next 7 days, but at his convenience. Time is of the essence. After the dark night comes the bright morning. We want to use this opportunity to finally wipe out the primordial sentiment once and for all. We will also include any of the kings of Esan land as patron of our association in order to strengthen inclusiveness. In addition, we shall encourage the setting up of a chapter of GBD domiciled in any of the great towns of Esan land with a probable unity conference, and all of these will be achieved before the end of this year, God willing. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the modern Benin people is in the shadow of its former exalted self, and every passing day we drown in the guilt of not realizing how long we have played second fiddle to other neighboring ethnic groups. We have mourned enough of what happened to us about 124 years ago. We must dust ourselves up and begin to start seeing the possibility of walking on the path of our heroic ancestors. Great Benin and its descendants are too great to have been shelved in the cocoon of unprecedented obscurity. We must rise up and take our place in the present affair of the country and the world, a place where we truly deserve, and we cannot do it by being divided as one and equal people. The great Benin descendants must unite as one indivisible entity, and together we shall return back our lost glory, which is the cardinal focus of our association, uniting all great Benin descendants all over the world as a tool, our rightful place in the affairs of this world. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, it is no longer a coincidence nor a mere choice, but the right of 576 years old prophecy that we will lead the next intellectual revolution that puts Benin back in the world atlas by the power of God and our ancestors. God bless great Benin people all over the world. God bless our nation that will be reborn. God bless our reviled monarch. Oba Atokwe.